You're listening to certified financial planner Doug Goldstein, host of the Goldstein on Gelt Show, www.goldsteinongelt.com.
Okay, I'm very excited to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show New York Times bestselling author Beth Kobliner, who wrote a book called Get a Financial Life. Now, Beth, I have to tell you, certainly in high school, people used to always say to me, oh, Doug, get a life. But I think yours is much more useful because you focus on people in their 20s and 30s. What are some of the big mistakes you see people at that age range making in terms of their finances?
Right. Well, I'd say, as we call them millennials, people now who are in their 20s and usually early 30s, are finding that it is very difficult for them to start on adulthood because many of them in the United States have large amounts of student loans. 20, 30 years ago, people graduated with sometimes a small amount of student debt, but now the average student debt in the U.S. for someone who graduates is $37,000, which is triple what it was in the 1990s. And the median debt is $20,000. But still, that's a lot of money to enter life when you don't have a job yet in most cases, or you're really just trying to start out, save money for a home one day, even pay rent.
Let's think about that.
Yeah.
I've heard these numbers before. Somehow I hear sometimes different numbers.
Right.
Young man or woman finishes school and goes out and gets a job. What would be a salary that people like that would get?
It might be about $40,000, like if $35,000, $40,000. And one of my favorite sources, this guy, Mark Kantrowitz, who's sort of the expert on student loans, he said that as long as your student debt is equal to roughly what your first year's income is, that's sort of a reasonable amount to shoot for. So if you get a job,
Why is it a problem? That's why you're saying that the millennials are with their back against the wall. But Let's say they took 10% of their income.
Right.
That's $4,000. After 5 years, they'd have paid off the debt, and hopefully they might have even gotten a raise over that time.
Right.
They've been able to pay it off sooner. So is this really a problem, or they just don't feel like saving?
Well, I think it really is a problem because now the median doesn't seem like that huge of an amount, $20,000. However, on the edges, what's happened a lot in the last 10 years is, for example, people would go to a for-profit college, not really even realizing what it was, and they'd come out after the first year, $80,000 in debt, and they would drop out of college. So there you have a double whammy of you have big debts to pay back and you didn't complete college. Or someone who makes a choice, who goes to, say, a faraway private college, and maybe the parents scrimp and save to send them there because the kid says it's his dream college. And then, 4 years later with a degree in, anthropology, or not there's anything wrong with that, but a degree in something that's not, maybe in Israel, anthropology will get you a job, but, maybe something that's a little less able to get a job, then you're talking about, $100,000 plus debt, and you're, not being able to get a job or get one for very low amounts of money. And then there's the underemployment issue in the U.S.
So these people know going in, right? This has been going on for a long time. We've been having this discussion.
Yes.
People know this, right? And kids in high school and their parents are sending them to school. I mean, come on. Why don't they just go to a community college and then get a job or figure something out? This is not like secret information. Everyone knows. And if people would be more responsible, it seems there are opportunities for higher education without spending $80,000 your first year.
I think that's a great question. And I really think, you could look back at the mortgage crisis in the U.S. and say, wait, you mean the bank was giving me a loan for 2% down and people were taking it? Didn't they realize, or no money down loans, or 10% down on a loan? And didn't people realize that's ridiculous? And I think that's what's happening here. It's often families who maybe don't have that much education or don't really understand. They feel like they love their children and they want to do their best for their children. And they're really, I believe very strongly, not given the right information. So if your kid, you don't really know, you didn't go to college, and your kid gets into some school and he's like, this is the best college, mom and dad. And you say, all right, we have this opportunity for him to go to what we think is this great private college. We're going to do it. And I've heard this time and time again in name brand schools that you've heard of. People get into this situation they come out and you could look them at them and say, why didn't you go to Queens College where I grew up? There was Queens College, was an amazing school and not very expensive. I think there's a lack of information. And the other big thing is the money is there. Like parents say, well, I can take a loan, and the government has a plus loan program, which basically gives you as much as you want.
Mm-hmm.
There are private loans that basically give you as much as you want. And I think parents, maybe parents are too soft on their kids or too willing to do anything to make sure their kids get that education that they think is better and often isn't. I think it's an education problem.
Even if it doesn't make sense. We're talking with Beth Kobliner, who wrote the book Get a Financial Life, a New York Times bestseller. All right, Beth, let's talk about the people then who they somehow manage to pay through college. They get a job, maybe they even have a slightly better job, but they're still young and they need to start investing. Where do you direct them? What types of investments should these people be looking at?
Well, the number one investment, and the good news is this millennial generation really seems to be taking advantage of them, are plans like retirement savings plans called 401ks that they have in the United States, where you work for an employer and they say, okay, we have this way to save. You can save, put money in this 401k account. It grows. It could either be tax deferred or free from tax completely. And you make a decision whether you put it in pre-tax or after tax. And the bottom line is when money is able to grow without you having to pay tax on it for many, 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 many years, it grows exponentially quickly. And the sooner you start at it, the better. And the other great thing about these 401ks is companies offer matching. They say, if you put in $1, Doug, I'll put in $1 up to a certain amount. And that means 100% return on your money. It's free money. So maxing out of these 401k plans are really, really important for young people when you get that match.
Yeah, so then when they put their money in, whether in a 401k or even an IRA or any sort of investment account, they're going to then say to themselves, but what do I do with it? And they may even remember when they were in high school when their parents flipped out and said, oh my God, the market just crashed. I lost half my money. So they're kind of afraid of the stock market. What should we be telling them? Ignore
it, because the stock market goes up, the stock market goes down. And the one thing we do know is if you try to time the market, 9 times out of 10, you'll be wrong. So the better thing to do is you think of it as long-term money you're not going to touch. And with some things like Roth IRAs, if it's an absolute emergency, you can get at the principal you put in, the money you first put in, without taxes and penalties after a few years. But the main thing is you just want to start saving in those plans early. My favorite examples are always, say you started at age 25 and you saved $1,000 a year till age 35 and then never touched it again. You let the money just sit there and grow. Or the other choice is starting at age 35 and saving every year till age 65. In the first example, you'd probably have about $200,000, even though you only save for those first 10 years. Whereas in the second example, you'd have less than that, maybe $150,000. The point is starting to save early and putting money into these accounts early allows for this sort of exponential growth to take place. And you want to start when you're in your 20s. I wrote a book for families on how to teach children about money. Whenever I say to someone, gee, if you only put away a few $1,000s from age 16 to 20, by now you'd have $100,000 in your account. There's this sense of, oh, I wish I would have done that. So I think, you're saying that in a room with a 50-year-old and then a 20-year-olds and hearing the 50-year-olds say, oh, I wish I would have done it. Maybe that's the thing that we need to motivate young people to really save more in these accounts. And you have to do it automatically. You can't say, well, I paid my rent and I paid my loans and then I went out to dinner and then I'm going to save. You have to do it right. It has to be off the top.
Yeah, I think the problem is people often don't have the discipline that they need. Unfortunately, Beth, we have the discipline here of keeping within a certain time, so we're just about out of that time. But in the last few seconds, tell me, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Oh, well, my book is called Get a Financial Life, Personal Finance in Your 20s and 30s. And my website is bethkobliner.com. And I'm on Twitter and Facebook and all those kinds of things.
All right, we will put links to that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Beth Kobliner, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thanks so much, Doug.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Check out all of Doug's money ideas at goldsteinongelt.com. Doug specializes in helping people who live outside the United States handle their U.S. investment accounts. If you have a question that you would like answered on the air or off, contact Doug at his website or send him an email to doug@profile-financial.com.